سعادة السيد تيجاني محمد بندي.
Your Excellency Mr. Tijani Mohamed Bonde, President of the General Assembly, Your Excellency Secretary General of the United Nations, Mr. Antonio Guterres, Honorable Heads of States and Governments, ladies and gentlemen. At the outset, it gives me great pleasure to congratulate you, Mr. President, on your election to preside over the 74th session of the United Nations General Assembly, wishing you success in this mission. I would also like to thank Her Excellency Madam Maria Fernanda Espinosa Garcés for her good conduct of the last session. Ladies and gentlemen, on the 16th of this month of September, the General Assembly voted on Resolution 344 in favour of the establishment of the Academy for Human Encounters and Dialogue in Lebanon. Allow me on behalf of my country to thank the member states that co-hosted this project and who voted in favour of it. Given that this is encouragement to us to move forward with this initiative that I launched here 2 years ago. I will be closely following up on the creation of this academy, because I believe that true peace is the one that unites human beings and not peace that is on paper, and because I firmly believe in the role and vocation of Lebanon as a land of convergence and dialogue. And the experiences and expertise of our people and our pluralistic society have led us to reject intellectual and religious extremism and have taught us tolerance and acceptance of differences. This academy is all the more important because it embodies an international project for the convergence of various cultures, religions, and ethnicities in order to promote the spirit of coexistence and to spread the culture of accepting the other in line with the principles of the United Nations and its noble aims to bridge the gap amongst peoples, of which the most important is preventive diplomacy to prevent conflicts. 2 days ago, here at the United Nations, we had the Climate Summit called at the invitation of the Secretary General. In this context, Lebanon joined the group of countries supporting the initiative of His Excellency the President of Austria for more climate ambition, after it was at the forefront of the signatory countries of the Paris Agreement. Also, Lebanon has taken various steps this year to promote the role of women. Indeed, the Lebanese government adopted and launched a comprehensive national plan to put into effect Resolution 1325 about women, peace and security of the Security Council, and we have begun implementation of this plan, and we have completed all the steps related to the work of the National Commission for Human Rights as well as the Torture Prevention Committee. Mr. President, ladies and gentlemen, the heated wars that have prevailed in many countries in the Middle East during the last decade has slightly been reduced. Nevertheless, its repercussions on our countries and societies are becoming more widespread and entrenched. especially at the economic and social levels. This year, the debates of the General Assembly have the theme of galvanizing the multilateral efforts for poverty eradication, quality education, climate action, and inclusion. Should we remind you once again of the adverse impact and the size of the adverse impact entailed by the Syrian displacement crisis and its repercussions on Lebanon in the security, political, social, economic, and environmental spheres, as well as its effect on infrastructure, growth, and the increased unemployment rate. This is seriously threatening the achievement of the Sustainable Development Goals in Lebanon and has led to a worsening of the economic crisis which we face. We are trying in all ways to face up to this difficult economic situation, and to do this we have set in place drastic structural measures and reforms to our economic and financial system, in cooperation with relevant international institutions. However, I would call upon all world leaders to make your contribution to the safe return of the displaced to Syria. Because the responsibility for this crisis is not just limited to Lebanon. On the contrary, this is an international shared responsibility, which makes it imperative for all of us to cooperate together to urgently find solutions. Indeed, the international community cannot content itself with providing minimum assistance to the displaced and refugees in their regions of displacement, while excluding programs for their safe and dignified return. The conditions of such return have now become available today. The security situation in most of the Syrian territories, according to international reports, has become stable, and military confrontations have been confined to the Idlib region. And the Syrian state has officially announced several times the return of its displaced citizens. To date, 370,000 displaced have left Lebanon for Syria, more than 250,000 of whom have returned to Syria, and the feedback we have states that they have been subject to persecution and mistreatment. On the other hand, we have questions with regard to certain international organizations who are trying to stop this return and using the security situation in Syria to sow fear amongst those who have been displaced. Which clearly indicates that they are posturing politically in this crisis. And the refugees are being turned into hostages in an international game to be used in future settlements. De facto, this may drive Lebanon to foster the undertaken return process in agreement with the Syrian state, which is threatening the very existence of the country. We are in the best position to know the problems that displaced peoples experience. Our country has had very many experiences in this regard. The first was in 1974, after the outbreak of the war in Cyprus, with the arrival of a large number of Cypriots in Lebanon. and then they swiftly returned to their country as soon as the ceasefire was declared, without waiting for the political solution, which has still not been achieved today. But our experience began in 1948 with the waves of displacement of the Palestinian people to the neighboring countries, and particularly Lebanon. And today Palestinians are still living in camps, awaiting their return and awaiting the political solution and the implementation of Resolution 194, and they've been waiting for more than 7 decades now. And in this context, I would like to guard against the danger of reducing the services provided by UNRWA to the Palestinian refugees. This adds social and fiscal strains, and the effects are being felt in Lebanon. The Palestinian youth should become education candidates, not revenge candidates. So I would warn against any attempt to undermine or change UNRWA's mandate, and I call on the contributing countries to the budget of UNRWA to double their contributions in order to enable it to maintain its vital role. Mr. President, ladies and gentlemen, the Middle East crisis has been continuing now for decades and is becoming more complicated because all the approaches to a solution and all of the Israeli practices are in contradiction with the founding principles of the United Nations. Indeed, the Judaization of Jerusalem and the methodic colonial policy and legislation that contradicts human rights, and the recognition of the annexation of lands that were occupied by force, as in the case of the Golan Heights, and also the electoral promises to annex new lands, and with all the leaks about the deal of the century, threatens the territorial unity of the country. In order to put an end to the Palestinian issue and keep the Palestinians where they are. Lebanon will suffer the effects of this because we host a large number of the refugees. And all of this undermines any chance for peace in the Middle East and points undoubtedly to a dark, unknown future. However, the rights of peoples remain, even when so much time passes by. Mr. President, ladies and gentlemen, the Israeli violations of Resolution 1701 have never ceased. And neither have the aggressions against Lebanese sovereignty by land, sea and air. The hostile act carried out last month against a residential area in the heart of Beirut is the most serious infringement of this resolution. Moreover, the fires that lasted for days in the occupied Sheba farms as a result of the incendiary Israeli shells represent an international environmental crime that requires condemnation of those who caused them. From this rostrum, I reiterate that Lebanon is a peace-loving country. We are committed to respecting Resolution 1701, and we always strive to respect it. Yet this commitment does not eliminate our natural, non-transferable right to legitimately defend ourselves in order to defend our land and our people with all available means. I also reaffirm here that Lebanon is strongly attached to its sovereign rights over the occupied Sheba farms, the Kfar Shuba Hills and the northern Gajar, occupied by Israel. We will spare no opportunity to establish the internationally recognized land border as recognized by the United Nations. And we will do our best to demarcate our maritime borders as well under UN supervision. Any contribution in this regard is welcome, particularly since Lebanon is going to begin exploratory oil and gas drilling operations in our territorial waters by the end of the year, and in accordance with international laws and norms. Mr. President, ladies and gentlemen, as Lebanon embarks on the preparations to celebrate the centenary of Greater Lebanon, you will be celebrating the 75th anniversary of the United Nations, which was founded on the 24th of October 1945. Ever since, the world has known many wars and conflicts, especially in the Middle East, the constant flashpoint on the planet, where temperature rises or drops but never cools down. And it is our peoples who continue to pay the high price, sacrificing their security, stability, their peace, their economy, and even their demographic diversity. Indeed, the core of the problem is the same. It hasn't changed. Namely, the contradiction between the interests of the strong and the right of the weak. Thus, principles, logic, and justice are lost and solutions are diluted. This aberration prevailing in politics today has cost the world its stability. Indeed, all parameters have been undermined, and there are no more any criteria to stem or control differences and thus solve issues according to applicable rules. So people are no longer able to converge and cooperate together to find political solutions beyond their borders. All opportunities for resolving conflicts have been lost, and this has opened the door wide for chaos. The United Nations has undertaken many initiatives in order to make the voice of peace and development heard. Some of them have succeeded, while many did not reach the desired outcome. We hope today that the United Nations will promote its general principles, international law and the charters, as they are the only reference to safeguard our rights. Indeed, no justice can be established, no right can be consecrated, no peace can be established, as long as the principle prevailing in our world is, I am strong, therefore I am right. Thank you for your attention.